Hello, everyone, and welcome to Living One. My name is Olivia, and I'm so glad to welcome all of you today. For those of you who don't know, Living One is Carlos's monthly webinar series, now in its 6th year. With guest speakers from around the world, we listen in to how people are bringing their ethics, minds, and lives into alignment with nature for earth and animal liberation and revitalization. Our second series of 2025, Encounters with the Unseen, delves into the critical, ethical, and ontological dimensions emerging from non-duality and our existence in a world of persons, only some of whom are human. Over the course of this series, 6 speakers discuss their experiences with and exploration of the less than obvious, often non-material worlds. Journey with us into unseen territories and discover how this deeper understanding can expand and restore wholeness and connection with the vitality of our living cosmos. Our guest today is Dr. Pim van Lommel. Pim was born in 1943, graduated in 1971 from the University of Utrecht, and finished his specialization in cardiology in 1976. He worked from 1977 to 2003 as a cardiologist at a teaching hospital in Arnhem, the Netherlands, and is now doing full-time research on the mind-brain relation. He published several articles on cardiology, but since he started his research on near-death experiences, NDE, in survivors of cardiac arrest in 1986, he is the author of over 20 articles, most of them in Dutch, 1 book, and many chapters about NDE. He was co-founder of the Dutch International Association of Near-Death Studies in 1988. Between 2005 and 2024, Pim has received innumerable honors, acknowledgements, and awards from organizations and individuals all over the world. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are all currently on various indigenous lands. I am currently on the ancestral homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, which includes the Ojibwa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. This land exists also as a place of trade with other indigenous communities, including the Ho-Chunk, Miami, Menominee, Sauk, and Meskwaki. The Carrillo Center for Nonviolence is located on the homelands of the grizzly bear, Takelma, Daku Bedite, coyote, coho salmon, golden eagle, and gray wolf. Finally, we ask that all of us participate with full respect and attention to each other in the spirit of peace and wisdom that Living One seeks to foster. So without further ado, we welcome Izzy Clark and Pim van Lommel.
Good evening or good morning, wherever you are. And Dr. van Lommel, Pim, it's a complete honour to have you with us for this session of Living One. I know that Gay has been a long time admirer of your work. And with this second series, Encounters with the Unseen, discussing as we are those elements of life that are invisible or obscure or are actively suppressed or obfuscated, it was an ideal opportunity to invite you, and we're delighted and honoured that you could join us. But I wanted to start out, for those who might not be familiar with near-death experiences, NDEs, can you give us a primer, if you like, what they are, how common they are, and what do people actually experience?
Well, there are a lot of questions to start with.
There are.
Well, the definition of a near-death experience is the reported memory of a special state of consciousness with several universal elements like feeling happy, an out-of-body experience, feeling a tunnel, seeing the light, meeting deceased relatives, meeting a being of light, having a life review where you relive everything what you have done and thought, sometimes or even a flash forward, future events. Then you come to a border and you know, when I cross this border I will never come back, and then usually a voice who says it's not your time yet, you have to get back. And then there's a conscious return into the body, which is very hard because the consciousness is too widened for this body, and you also have the complaints of the problems you had because you had a near-death experience. Usually by cardiac arrest, we studied patients who survived a cardiac arrest, clinical death, but also patients with coma due to traffic accidents of cerebral ischemia or stroke. a loss of blood with young women, complicated childbirth, children with near drowning. But you can also have these kind of experiences. You fear death, like traffic accident or mountaineering accident, where you think you will die, but you will not die. You can have it in the terminal phase of illness, end-of-life experiences. But you can also have this kind of experience in meditation, enhanced consciousness, in meditation, in isolation, in existential crisis of severe depression, or without any obvious reason, like walking in nature. And based on studies that have been done, inquiries in Germany and the United States, about 4 to 5% of the population in the Western world must have had an NDE, which is more than 10 million people in the USA and 600,000 people in the Netherlands and more than 20 million people in Europe. So it's quite common, but the problem is that people don't talk about it, because when you have this kind of overwhelming experience, it's totally new for you. It's overwhelming. You cannot find words for it. It's an ineffable experience. When you start to share it with others, like doctors, nurses, they tell you this is nonsense, it's a hallucination. Go over here, have you some medications, etc. So usually they keep silent for many, many years, with periods of depression, homesickness, and loneliness, until they read something about their death experience, or see a film on television, or read a book, meet people with an NDE, and then they start accepting the experience, and then at last can integrate experience. It takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I've met people who have been silent for more than 50 years before they were not able to share their experience with others. So it's a spiritual trauma as well. I always say as a joke, in the Western world, it's you're crazy. And when you have the NDE in India, you get congratulations, because they know that it's possible.
It's fascinating that you mentioned that, I mean, right from the start, that these experiences are aligned to experiences that people have at other points of life. So whether through meditation or through that intense fear of death. And particularly, I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but I recently read a book by a scholar, Jack Hunter, who writes about ecology and spirituality. So he writes a lot about mystical experiences, and in his book he in alignment with an ecological awareness, and he reports that psychologists Kenneth Ring and Evelyn Valerino, who you may know, have
I know them both very well.
You know them both, and they've noted parallel effects amongst near-death experiencers who often develop a heightened sensitivity to the ecological health of the planet following their experience, with these other mystical experiences that that people might have. And he describes similar experiences through alien abduction, through the use of psychedelics, and through mystical experiences, meeting a nature spirit, for example. And he goes on, changing patterns of behavior and worldview have been noted in the aftermath of other forms of extraordinary experience. There appears to be a connection between anomalous and extraordinary experiences of various kinds and the development of a sense of ecological awareness. Does that make sense to you?
Well, there are three major aspects of transformation when you have had an NDE. That's what we studied in a longitudinal study. We did a prospective study in 344 consecutive survivors of cardiac arrest in 10 Dutch hospitals. And we found that 18% of those patients who survived cardiac arrest reported a near-death experience. And we did a longitudinal study with all survivors of cardiac arrest with an NDE, with a matched control group of patients who survived cardiac arrest without any memory, to see if the transformation is due to the NDE or due to the cardiac arrest. And what we found is only patients with a near-death experience have classical transformation. First of all, they lose the fear of death. So death is not the end of who you are. That's what they have experienced. The second is new insight, what is important in life. And that is empathy, compassion, and love, unconditional, first towards yourself. accept your own negative aspects we all have. And then also to others, to plants, to animals, to planet Earth, because they are connected with everybody and everything. That's why near-death experience is also called the experience of oneness. You are connected with everybody and everything, and that this interconnectedness will always be there. So they're close to nature, close to planet Earth, and they also change the way they live. Usually they get vegetarian, don't eat meat anymore. And the third aspect is enhanced intuitive sensitivity, which means that they know what other people think and feel, which is quite difficult for them because they don't want to know what you, but they know when someone is dying, and when they say they feel this person will die in 3 weeks, and he dies in 3 weeks, so they know that they are ill or know that their mother has died. They know a lot of information that they could not know. So it's what I call a non-local information exchange. You got information beyond time, beyond space, and not by your senses. And so these are the three major transformations for people who had an NDE. The content of experience of enhanced consciousness, like say in psychedelics, is usually different. Let's say the classical elements we have in the near-death experience usually don't happen in usual psychedelics of other experience of enhanced consciousness, that they have access to this enhanced consciousness, and this is why they change a lot.
Your internationally acclaimed book, Conscious Beyond Life, provides an absolutely fascinating and comprehensive discussion on these experiences, what they are, how they relate to deepening our understanding of consciousness and its relationships to quantum processes. The book also includes a number of narratives by individuals who experienced NDEs. And just as you said, one such a strong theme that seems to thread through them all is love. And perhaps it's not surprising that a cardiologist, a scientist of the heart, became involved in NDEs. How did you I mean, I know you'd experienced patients who had them, but at first, were you as skeptical as many other people are? How did they transform?
I was raised as a materialist scientist, materialist cardiologist. I learned on school, like you did as well, and I learned on university, that consciousness is a product of brain function. That's it. No discussion. And it is a never proven hypothesis. Never proven hypothesis. So when I just started my specialization in cardiology, worked in one of the first coronary care units in the Netherlands in '69, because the modern resuscitation techniques like defibrillation and accidental chest compression became possible. Before 1967, all patients with cardiac arrest died. And that's why coronary care units started, because the CPR became possible. So in the first start of coronary care units, we had a 44-year-old man who had a cardiac arrest, and we resuscitated him with several shocks. And we were so happy that he regained consciousness. It was new for us, and I was the doctor in charge. So we succeeded to get him back, but the patient was very, very disappointed and told me about going through a tunnel and seeing a light and music, hearing music, beautiful landscape, etc. I never forgot this event, but I just was young. I had a young family with 2 small children, started specialization. So I never forgot it, but it didn't do anything with it until in 1986. I read a book by George Ritchie, Return from Tomorrow, where he describes in very deep near-death experience, which he experienced as a medical student in 1943, when he died of double pneumonia. There were no antibiotics available for this medical student. So he died. His body was covered with a sheet. And the nurse was so upset that this young medical student had died that she was able to persuade the medical doctor to give him an injection. And right into his heart was totally uncommon in that time. And he regained consciousness after 9 minutes. And he had a very, very deep and impressive near-death experience. It's still a wonderful book. You can read it in one evening. And that was the reason that I started to interview patients who survived a cardiac arrest if they had memories of the period of unconsciousness, the period of cardiac arrest. And between 86 and 88, I had about 50 patients who survived cardiac arrest, and 12 of them shared their NDE with me. And the problem is that was impossible, because we had learned that consciousness is a product of brain function. So when the heart stops, the brain function stops, it should be impossible to have memories, let alone a clear memory, a clear consciousness with cognition, with memories. So it should be impossible. So for me, it started with scientific curiosity, because what I've learned, it should be impossible. And that's why we started in 1988 the prospective study, which was published in The Lancet in 2001. And it's still the largest study ever done, with statistical analysis as well. So we found we could prove that 80% had a near-death experience, and the transformation is just only due to the NDE and not due to the cardiac arrest itself. And it gave a worldwide stir. It was on the front pages of all papers all over the world. It was incredible. So I had to stop for 1 week from our outpatient clinic because I had so many requests for interviews that I couldn't work. And then in 2003, when I was 6 years old, I retired early because beside of the 60 hours a week, cardiology had a 50 hours a week near-death experience. That was too much for me.
Wow, I'm not surprised.
I stopped cardiology when I was 60 years old and started my own, let's say, created a new full-time job.
Because you have sort of worked through. I know that wonderful interview that you shared with us before this talk.
With Essentia Foundation, yeah.
You recount all the different hypotheses that might explain in sort of mechanistic or reductive terms what's happening in a near-death experience, and none of them seem valid. So you're a scientist. What's the process that you went through to sort of say there is something that we don't understand happening here?
Yeah, first of all, as I told you before, I was materialist, so it should be impossible that people have this near-death experience. And when I've spoken to many people with the NDE, and I start reading about near-death experience, I had to read the book by Raymond Moody in 1975, Life After Life. I read it later. And I started to read the Bible and about Hinduism, about Tibetan Buddhism, etc. So anthropology from Rudolf Steiner. So and then it became clear to me that what I had learned was wrong. So the never proven hypothesis that consciousness is a product of brain function should be discussed again. And that's why the study of NDEs with people who survive the cardiac arrest is so important, because we know that the brain function stops between 10 and 20 seconds. So when you have a patient with a cardiac arrest, they lose consciousness within seconds. The blood flow to the brain here, which you can measure, is 0 within 1 second. The body reflexes, which are a function of the cortex of the brain, stop. So the body doesn't react anymore. The brain stem reflexes stop. The gag reflex, the corneal reflex, white and fixed pupils are the clinical findings. The breathing center closer to the brainstem stops, which if the people don't breathe anymore. So the clinical findings are no brain function anymore, nor the cortex and the brainstem don't function anymore. And where you have had patients, especially in induced cardiac arrest, and patients with an induced cardiac arrest, where you have EEG, electric activity of the brain, you see within 10 to 20 seconds a flatline EEG. So all the things we know is that in cardiac arrest there is no brain function. In contrary, the consciousness is enhanced. You have more memory than you ever had, and meeting deceased relatives, etc., and consciousness returning to the body. So for me now, it's obvious that the brain doesn't produce consciousness, but the brain is an interface function or a filter function or whatever you would call it. And to understand, so this consciousness that people experience in a near-death experience is beyond time, beyond space. Everything happens at the same time. When you have a life review, you relive your whole life and you know what you have said, what you have done, what you have thought. Each thought you ever had is kept forever. and you are also connected with other people. So when you took some plaything from your little sister, you know how sad she was. So you know it's not looking at the film, but you relive your whole life in several minutes. But when you talk about it, you can talk for a week or more. So everything happens at the same moment. When you think of somebody or someplace, you will be there. And also future events are there. So you are in an aspect of consciousness beyond time, beyond space, and everything connected. And that's what we call the non-local consciousness. And we use non-local consciousness from quantum physics. Quantum physics is an analogy to understand non-local. It's not an explanation at all. So based on studies in the death experiences, based on recent findings in neuroscience, and based on analogy in quantum physics, we call it now non-local consciousness.
Right.
And that's an important finding. And that you can also come to this conclusion where you do research in patients who survive cardiac arrest. Then you can say something about the mind-brain relationship.
So one of the things, and I'm sure that sort of countless people have said, well, is there something like a déjà vu experience, which are there ways that your brain can kid you that it's been awake when it wasn't, and that all these experiences are coming when you're coming back into consciousness? I know people will have put claims like that to you, and how do you sort of respond to those kind of?
Well, first of all, déjà vu is real. People can have a déjà vu when they've come somewhere in France in a house and they have a déjà vu. I've been there before, but it could be in previous life. So it's déjà vu. But in the death experience, we can prove that it happens during cardiac arrest because of the out-of-body experiences. So, and also in our study, we reported a case of also a 40-year-old man who had a cardiac arrest, was found in a meadow 30 minutes before he came into the hospital, the coronary care unit. And it was a deep coma. His body was cold, it also was blue, but no breathing, no heartbeat, no reaction of the pupils. And the nurse started to intubate the patient to give him more oxygen. And then he found out that the patient had a prosthesis, dentures in his mouth. So he took out his prosthesis and put it somewhere on the crash cart. And it took 1.5 hours before they had sufficient heart rhythm and blood pressure, but he was still ventilated. So had to be transferred to the intensive care unit for necessary respiration for 1 week. And after 1 week, he came back to cardiac ward, and he was just there. And the nurse came in for medication, and he saw the nurse say, "You know where my dentures are." And he could tell exactly that I was there. You took my denture, put it on a car with all those bottles, and there was a sliding underneath, and there exactly put my teeth. And he could describe the small room where he was resuscitated from a position above his body. He could see himself, he could see the nurses and doctors busy with the CPR, but he could also describe the small room where he came in coma and left in coma, and still could describe it in all details. That means that his ND happened when there was no blood pressure, when he was in deep coma, there was no respiration, nothing at all, no reflection from his brain. And then at that very moment, he had an ND. So this excludes all the other possible explanations.
It does. And I had a very bad accident, and I was actually in an induced coma, so it wasn't quite a coma. But I had just some rather unpleasant experiences, and so I'm really quite jealous about people who've had near-death experiences. And I'm interested also in that it is a percentage of the people who have been dead and then come back to life. And I think in your research, you discounted any sort of connecting factors. It does appear to have been random, but from looking at it from the outside, it seems like, some generous way to make death acceptable to a living creature, that this experience, allows you to, accept the letting go of your body. But then it seems a bit unfair that only 20% of people experience it.
Why? There's no reason why people have an NDE or why other people don't have an NDE. There's no scientific explanation at all. So don't ask the question, because you can never get an answer for it.
There's no so I mean, I couldn't just like try to be a good person and then
Yes, yes, that's all right. So perhaps you didn't need one.
yes, maybe that's it. Maybe that's
That
it.
could be possible. Yeah. And still another thing is that near-death experience is a spiritual trauma.
Yeah.
It gives so many problems: the depression, homesickness, loneliness. They lose their partner. More than 70% has a divorce because the partner says it's not the same person I married before. So they lose their family, they lose their friends, they lose their job. They're not interested anymore in the material world. So it's not about money, it's not about power, it's not about beautiful body, not about many clothes, it's not about big car or house. It's just about helping other people, being aware of the planet Earth, endangered planet Earth. So they change the way they live, and it is because of the integration of the experience. But it is hard work. Hard work. It takes years and years before they are able to change their life. But they lose a lot. They lose their marriage. They lose their friends. They lose their family. So it's not easy at all.
No, but I suppose this sort of, people make those changes without, for some ethical reason, but that happens in a process, doesn't it? It doesn't happen as an immediate transformation, and you don't have the case of someone saying, well, you weren't like this before, and that shock. But also what you said about homesickness, is there a sense that they've lost what the experience, lost the profound depth and wonder of that experience, that having experienced that, there's always a kind of yearning for it?
Yes, always. It's always there. Each day, each minute, each second, the experience is there, always. And it was a beautiful experience. There's a very positive feeling of unconditional love, feeling accepted. So it's a beautiful landscape, beautiful music, beautiful colors. So it's a beautiful experience, but people don't accept it in this material world. So that's the problem.
One of the things that you talked about, the quantum world as being an analogy.
Yes.
But that idea of those kind of terms such as entanglement and non-locality, so that this could help us to think about not just consciousness beyond life, but also about consciousness per se, and about a different understanding of the world, moving away from that dualistic material objective paradigm to a validation of subjectivity and perhaps non-duality. So you and individuals like quantum physicist David Bohm, embody this different paradigm. And I think in your book you quoted the Dutch playwright and philosopher Frederik van Eeden, who says, "I'm more convinced than ever that the a priori rejection of and refusal to examine unfamiliar and unusual phenomena is the greatest foe of scientific progress." What do you feel have been the impacts of dismissing near-death experiences and dismissing and ignoring the suggested alternative way of being, alternative view of consciousness that they point towards?
Well, the problem is that a lot of people are not aware of these kind of experiences, let alone the impact it has on someone's life. And they are open until they have a family member or somebody they know very well who will share the NDE with them. But for most people, it's just impossible, and they don't believe it. And they learned at university that consciousness is a product of brain function. So still, most neuroscientists are looking in the brain to look somewhere to find consciousness, but they will never do. So what I had as conclusion from all the studies on the death experience, not only our study, but also others, is that consciousness is beyond time, beyond space. It's eternal. It has no beginning. It has no end. And it's fundamental in the universe. The universe started with consciousness together with energy and information. So everything, not only our body and human being, but also animals and plants and the planet Earth, is based on subjectivity, is based on an aspect of consciousness. So it's fundamental. And so what we call now is post-materialist science, that is that we include subjective experiences, because current science is materialistic science, and only that is true what we can objectify, what we can measure, what we can duplicate, what we can falsify. And what you think, what you feel, you cannot objectify, you cannot measure, you cannot falsify, you cannot duplicate, etc. So your consciousness is beyond the material science. So it doesn't exist in a materialist science. So we change it in a post-material science, which include subjective experience. So it is we have to expand consciousness towards a post-materialist science, which includes what we are, the essence of who we are, our consciousness.
Do you think, I mean, I was reading a book recently called The Genius Within it's a doctor, Frank, I can't remember his last name, but he is a doctor, and he's talking about the intelligence of cells, the intelligence of the immune system. And I'm thinking of my own microbiome. And, and I do think, the intelligence of cells, I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but I suppose I think they're conscious, the cells and the bacteria. And so am I then, I mean, can I access it? If I were accessing consciousness that's everywhere, why can't I access my microbiomes? I mean, am I sort of like, it's something that feels so entangled with me, and yet I'm not it. Do you know what I mean? My brain starts getting sort of confused about where I begin and end, and if I don't end, then why can't I feel my way into those that are closest to me, like my microbiome?
Well, there's no consciousness inside your cells, but cells have an interface function.
An interface function.
So they receive information from outside. So your body and your brain and your heart and all your organs, and each cell has an interface function. Presumably what I write in my book is it is DNA or junk DNA which receives information from outside and changes it. So when you have an organ transplant, then you transplant an organ with an active interface with the consciousness of the donor. So the receiver will change as well, because they receive the interface function from the consciousness of the donor. So when you have the first moment that a new human being is formed, when the egg cell and the spermatozoa come together after 4 cell divisions, the cells are changing into a heart cell, a nerve cell, whatever cells. But the DNA is the same, but the function changes. And the function changes because of information from outside, which you can call the morphogenetic consciousness. So each cell is connected with aspects of consciousness. Also, everything in your body, also by bacteria, etc.
It sounds as if there are some similarities with Rupert Sheldrake's idea of morphic resonance.
Morphic.
Yeah.
The only thing is Rupert doesn't believe in the future. It's just information from the past. And non-locality means that also the future is available. But I agree with him, he's a genius, Rupert Sheldrake. But the morphic resonance is about what has been happening before somewhere. And with non-local consciousness, also the future is available.
I'm going to share this with you because I have a feeling that you're compassionate, and I know that your mind is vast enough that you'll be able to take it as I intend. There's a particular tree I sit with. I sit with various trees, and with this particular tree, I had a sense of, I think the physicists call it like Bullock time, where all time is present in all time is, and
It's the now. It's the now.
Yes, all time is now. So, it was like a flash of I mean, I only didn't see all of it, but like a kind of, I don't know, maybe 3,000 years of that place just woof and into the future as well with the tree. I mean, I couldn't do it, but the tree did. So does that, I mean, it was a weird thing that's only happened with that one tree, but it was something that I felt very, very strongly at that moment, that sense of,
Which means that you have enhanced intuition,
I had,
enhanced intuitive sensitivity. So you received information from the tree. And the tree has a lot of information. And when you have an enhanced intuition, you can feel the information from the tree. People with an ND also have this capacity usually.
well, that's,
Do you have other aspects of enhanced intuition? Do you sometimes feel what things are going to happen, etc., future events?
I don't so much. My mother used to a little bit, but she used to have, yes, she used to have that.
Hmm.
And one of my brothers, he's
You have it. You have it also because what you told me, you shared with me.
yes, well, with that,
So it's an experience of oneness with nature. What you had,
yes, I
you
feel
were one with the tree.
yeah, I feel very, very connected to trees, and it's fascinating that what we're talking about here is a place where I can, where I can say that. So I thank you for that, because that's it's generous.
It's not about what I told you. It's about information and consciousness and information as well and energy as well. The three of that come together as fundamental in the universe.
Yes, I consciousness, energy, and information. So how do those three, what are the roles of those three in
It's
your,
together. It's together.
it's together.
You cannot split it up. Where consciousness has energy and also has information. So it's always there together.
Can you have energy you can have energy without consciousness?
No, it's an aspect of consciousness.
It's always an aspect of consciousness. And information, always an aspect of consciousness. Okay, this is really helpful for me. I'm going to, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we've been talking a
I
bit.
can have just another question. Are you from the UK?
I am.
Yes, I thought so.
Yes, and I'm here in in the UK. I'm from a place called Dartmoor. Do you know?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a close to big tors, granite rocks, and gnarled trees, and
Okay. That's because of your accent. I thought so.
yes. Um, we've been talking a little bit about how NDEs have deepened our understanding not only of consciousness, but also to an extent of the fundamentals of life and death. So how does this change your view of life and death, and your view of ethics when you embrace all that these experiences have led you to embrace?
I always quote, our ideas of death define how we live our life. So when you believe that death is the end of who you are, then you will give all the energy to the material aspects of the world. It's about money, it's about power, it's about big car, it's about young body, etc. But when you know there's a continuity of consciousness that could never end, then your attention will be drawn to what is important in life. That you are connected with nature, with other people as well. You are the others as well. And the way you live changes as well. What I told most people then, they become vegetarian. They love nature, they love silence, they hate loud music. So all those things, they change. And also when you have an NDE as a baby with a complicated childbirth, you don't remember the NDE. But you all are different. You have a different child. That's chapter 5 in my book. Then you have the enhanced intuition. So they're lonely children. They look to other children who are playing and yelling, and you want to have small child, silence, nature, etc., classical music. And so they grow different. So the transformation is an essential, let's say it's the objective proof of the subjective experience.
Yes. Yes, that makes sense. It's changed your life as well, hasn't
Oh,
it?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I told you before, I was materialist, and it was normal that the concept was approached for brain function. But I've met more than 1,000 people, and they have tens of thousands of emails from all over the world. People share the ND with me. So when the Lancet study was published, I had 200 emails a day, and I have it also when my book came out. 200 emails a day. Now it's more quiet with 50 to 80 emails a day. so people will find me. But for me, I love silence. Our house is always silent, no music, except when we want to listen, but it's always silence. But we garden, we love gardening. We're living close to a national park, 300 meters from here, where always each day we walk on bike. So I want to be at least 1 hour outside in the nature.
Yeah.
So my wife I'm also vegetarian. We have, more than 25 years, have biologic food from anthroposophic basis. So biologic dynamic food.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's influenced by you mentioned his name.
Steiner, anthroposophy,
Yeah.
So at our home, each Saturday there come about 50 families who come for the vegetables. We have a center here where each Saturday a farmer brings the vegetables for 50 families. Well, we have it already for more than 25 years.
Wow.
So we try to live healthy and close to nature.
Occasional glass of wine, organic?
Well, 1 or 2 half glasses a week or so. I never smoke. I never smoke.
You are virtuous. Honestly, it has been such a delight for me, but I want to make sure that other people have the opportunity to put questions to you. I thank you so much for your
You're welcome. Nice questions.
Oh no, I mean, Gay was sort of helping me because I felt somewhat lost with the subject area. But once we got talking, you are the kindest man, and thank you. Thank you for your generosity. So those of you who are attending, if you'd like to put up your hand, I haven't got the chat open, so I don't think anyone's asked any questions in there. But if someone has got a question, now is your opportunity to find out more. And I know that Gay will want to have a word with you. So while everyone's thinking of their questions, I'm going to put Ms. Bradshaw in the hot seat.
Oh, thank you, Pim. So wonderful. I can't help but think from the whole questioning of the subjective experience as the quote unquote objective paradigm versus one that encompasses quote unquote the subjective, and it feels so profound a shift. So from the whole society, psychologically, everything, if there was an embrace of subjective experience, whether it's an NDE or not, in the sense of that, and how the reliance on the objectivity in such a rigid way is so corrosive. I mean, that's my feeling, is it so corrosive because we don't trust each other. I don't trust you. You don't trust me at that fundamental level. So in other words, to me, one of the very important kind of outcomes or implications of your work is fortifying respect and care for another individual's experience.
You don't hear story from the NDEs unless you listen without any comment and prejudice. You have to be open-minded, otherwise people will stay silent. The other aspect, which is important as well, is a quote from someone who had an NDE. When the power of love becomes stronger than our love for power, our world will change. And that's the essence of the NDE as well. And that's essence for how we should live. It's about love and not about power.
Yeah. And it has also struck me again, like I said, the implications is, I mean, this is my experience working with, in our sanctuary with the animals and the trees where I live, etc., is that the sort of the point of, it's like a landscape, it's the point of perspective. The point of the perspective is not on the form, is not on the outside, but within.
Yes.
And so to me, that's another aspect of it, is that it shifts, you were saying shifts from a material into the non-material values and ethics. And I think a very important point is that we start to look deep within, deep beyond. And that really is much more congruent with, like you say, the analogies or the models of quantum physics as well. In other words, it's not this form, and also other traditions like Buddhism and things like that. It's not the form, it's really something interior or beyond.
I agree with you. And the problem is when you have an NDE, this will through change is abrupt. And then you have to get to live with it. And that's difficult. It's not a process of years of learning, but it is from one moment to the other, you have changed.
Do they, I know that there are, I mean, they're usually sort of under the rubric or umbrella of a study, but there are places and spaces where ND experiences can meet each other and discuss and talk. Does that have an impact on them in terms of
It's
maybe
very helpful.
more empowered?
It's very helpful. That's the IONS, also in the United States, but we have an IONS down in the Netherlands, and we have twice a year a community from 6 to 80 people with an ND who share their experience. And we have a quarterly journal about experiences, etc. And there are also people you can connect with when you have troubles with your near-death experience. So, and that's the same what IONS US also does. It's an important aspect to help people because they feel lost. They're not feeling accepted, and they have problems to accept their own experience. I've met a lot of medical doctors who had an NDE, and they said, what happened to me now, I've always said it is impossible. Now I have to live with it. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I don't know if you recall, but many years ago, I actually sent you, because I wrote it up, that there was a rabbit that I was taking care of, and she was paraplegic, and anyway, she died. And I mean, I don't have the fancy equipment, but I have a stethoscope and her pulse and her breathing with a mirror, and she died for several minutes. I didn't keep count, but it was definitely several minutes. And then and I had, what happened, she was declining, and so the doctor had given me a mild sedative just to ease her in out, and I used several. She just, because then I mean, she just, I guess I was afraid that she would have something, and so she was definitely dead. And I was crying, and my head was next to her, and she was on the couch, and this one here, and my head was down by her. And then I heard this sound and whatever, and there she was with her ears and eating blueberries, because I had put blueberries next to her. She loved blueberries. And then I did share with you is that she changed and I changed. For me, I'll just share, it was just like an experience that, I don't know how else to say it. It was grace, and it was almost as if the skies parted, the world parted. I can't quite describe it, but it was this incredible the parting, and it was almost as if there was music. There wasn't music, but it was this incredible feeling. And she became very I mean, she's always an angelic person, but she became just this sort of ethereal personality. So I always wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to read that. But that was definitely, and you pointed that out, that there are vicarious, or I'm not sure the term you used, where someone who witnesses the death of a person and then the person coming back. So it's a vicarious NDE.
Shared death experience. But what happened to you was a gift from this rabbit. She gave a gift to you. Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful.
Mary, you've got your hand up there, so let you ask your question.
I don't know after that, the gift from the rabbit. Have to sit here and take a breath. Oh, shoot, my computer is telling me it's slow. Well, I have a couple of questions. One of them is about my own near-death or out-of-body experience, but I also have a question to you, Dr. van Lommel. I know, being a scientist, it can be difficult to express these ideas to your peers, especially initially. And I believe that you and Alex Marin Gomez have talked some about this. He's been talking quite a bit about. He had an NDE 4 years ago, and he's a very serious physicist, and it's very difficult to be go along the line of wanting objective evidence for things, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, but I had this and it's real. And how do you I mean, you have colleagues who are mainstream cardiologists, and they must kind of question you, or do they? I mean, do you present at AMA meetings? I mean, are you out there with these people who are naysayers, or want to know what evidence do you have?
I never try to convince other people, nor any other doctors as well. So when they're open, they will listen, and when they're not open, they won't listen. So they have a problem. I have not a problem, and I just follow my heart. And also doing the studies, I follow my heart. I followed all the patients who shared the NDE with me. So it's not a problem that other people think about it. Not at all.
Okay. Well, that's.
And I think that more this time, especially the younger generation, is much more open. When I give lectures to medical students or younger doctors or nurses, are much more open now than my generation. So I'm very positive. It's changing.
That's really good to hear. Okay. So yeah, 50 years ago, I was in a car accident. A gentleman, young man, came around a blind corner in my lane, and he died. And I was in and out of consciousness by the side of the road. And at the time, and I ended up on the way to the hospital, I had an out of body experience. When I went back to see the surgeon, I'd only lived in this place a couple of months, so I didn't know the area. So when I was going to the hospital, there was a corner the ambulance had turned, and now I was driving, and I had not seen that corner from horizontal. I had seen it from up above, and I was looking down.
You were out of your body.
yeah, exactly. And the physician I knew well because I worked at the hospital. I asked him about it at the time, and he said, "Oh yeah, we lost your, it wasn't a cardiac arrest, but they lost my blood pressure." So, but we didn't talk about it much. That's 50 years ago, right? So there's just not a whole lot going on around it. But recently, this is like the anniversary, and someone was saying, well, there was another spirit in the boy who died, the young man who died. And so lately I've been thinking, gee, we must have communicated somehow. And I don't know if we did. Is there a way to remember what that communication could have been? I mean, he left, and what I remember, I saw a white tunnel. I didn't see any people, but I kind of hear a conversation saying, it's too soon for her. We don't want her now. She has to stay, or some kind of thing, that there was, you don't get to come. It looked like a really nice place to go, but it was not allowed at the moment.
That's what you had to come back. You had to come back, and the other boy had to stay there.
Yeah, I wondered if we had a conversation between us.
Did you ever have after-death communication with him?
I tried to find his family. I just actually moved back to where I had this accident recently, and I haven't found the family because I thought, well, maybe they can show me exactly where I never went back to where it happened, so I've never.
place isn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's the connection after that communication is always everywhere. It's non-local.
Ah, non-local.
So when they want to contact you, it will happen.
Thank you. I
You
think
want
I'm
to-
getting it.
Yeah,
I feel like he's
you-
calling.
you had you must have enhanced intuition as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right.
Do you think, I mean, it sounds like these experiences, when they are accepted, when people get the opportunity to think about them, they seem to have such profoundly beneficial impacts on the way that people respond to life. What would, I mean, could we just like give everyone a pill so everyone has them, make the world a better place?
But there's so many experience of enhanced consciousness, not only the death experience, but also in the terminal phase of illness. You have the end of life experiences. So an enhanced consciousness, also meeting deceased relatives, or seeing a light, or seeing a beautiful landscape. It happens more than 150 million times in the USA. And about 125 million people in Europe have had this after-death communication of the end-of-life experience as well. So you have possibility to be in contact with the enhanced consciousness. Also share that experience where you're at the deathbed of somebody, you are taken with him to the light or to the tunnel, etc. You can have the terminal lucidity, where you have the end states of Alzheimer, where you don't remember anything, or sometimes even are in coma or unresponsive. Then acutely you sit up, see the family members, call them by name, thank them, and you die, which is impossible because the brain is so severely damaged by an end stage of Alzheimer. So all these kind of experiences happened around the deathbed and the dying as well. So, and when I gave a lecture, about 30 or 50% of the people who attend the lecture have had an after-death communication. That's why they are there. So because when you have a contact with the consciousness of a deceased relative, then it means that consciousness is always there. So it changed the insight as well.
Thank you. Mary's got her hand up again. She's super keen.
Oh, another question. You have to.
There. Yeah, there.
There you are.
Okay. So, well, when you talked about materialism, that made me think of a book by Bernardo Kastrup, who I think he wrote. It's called Materialism is Baloney. Are you familiar?
I know him quite well. He's a good friend of mine.
Okay. I love this guy. Really.
He lives in the Netherlands.
Oh, does he? Oh, well.
He is from Argentina, but he lives in the Netherlands.
Okay. And then there was another question. Why is it when I have one question, I lose the second one? Well, does anybody else want? Oh, I know what it was. It was about consciousness, and so I don't know if consciousness is related to psyche, and is it outside the body maybe more than inside? And then I also think about Jung, Carl Jung, familiar with his work. He wrote in his autobiography about his near-death experiences, and that he thought of himself as originating as a rhizome under the ground, maybe like the collective unconscious. I don't know what the words would be for it, but that part goes on forever, and maybe the part above the ground dies off, and then something comes back. I don't know.
He described his near-death experience in 1943 at a cardiac arrest, and he could describe the planet Earth from above, India, Sri Lanka, etc. And 40 years later, it was by the astronauts that he could confirm what he had seen 40 years earlier in a body experience. And so it's clear. And then about where is your consciousness? I try to compare it with worldwide communication. When you look the iCloud, the internet, you have 1 billion websites or 1 billion YouTube films always around you, encoded in information, in the electromagnetic informational waves. Also, at this very moment, in your place, and where I am now, 1 billion websites and YouTube films. Is you need a computer to put it on, and then you receive small parts of this website, of the iCloud, to come, and you can receive the information as well. But when you close your computer, the information is always there. So you need a functional instrument. Your brain is like the computer. It's an instrument, an interface, a filter. So you receive just a small part of what is available in the non-local consciousness as your waking consciousness. It's just a small part of your memories. But when you're out of your body in a near-death experience, you have access to all the memories you had from early childhood, of sometimes before birth. So we have everything is there because it's non-local. Beyond time, beyond space, everything is there. So the waking consciousness that we have at this moment is just a small part of this non-local consciousness, which is always inside and outside you.
So it's in and out.
No.
All right.
Pim,
Okay.
can I ask you, so when we die as such, or when the form is passed, does the consciousness that we experience, does it, in your opinion, do you feel that it remains, its integrity remains, or is it like, these are various pictures on my mind, like a drop of ink in a river, right? It remains kind of its form and then it diffuses. Do you have any thoughts on that or consciousness on that?
I think the essence of who we are is eternal, stays forever. It's where the higher self with capital. But you lose your ego. But you're here in the physical world, you have the ego with jealousy and whatever, all those feelings. That's lost. The essence of who you are, that will be eternal. So you're like the wave in the ocean. The wave is always there. It's connected. So it's still a part of individuality, and it's part of the whole. So when you have the after-death communication, you have communication with the consciousness of the deceased relative. It's still there. You can recognize, you can see them, feel them, hear them, smell them. It's also always there. So just this part, the essence of who you are, is there. So the essence of who you are is your consciousness. And when you leave the body, leave your physical world, you have an enhanced consciousness beyond time, beyond space. And you are unfolded in pure, unconditional love. And that's what happens when you die.
When I'll just share another personal experience. When my father died before my mother, they were very, very close. And she would talk, we would talk, she was living back east with my brother, and we would talk, and she would talk about how she had these conversations with my father. And she would say,
After he died.
after he died.
Okay.
And my mother was she was a nurse, but she was a very down to earth, very, very factual, I mean, loving, but a very factual person. And she would, say things like, "Oh, I was so upset with your father last night. You know how when we talk politics, I just can't stand it." And she would be very specific about these things. My brother, on the other hand, wasn't so, he didn't think, but for me, that was quote unquote real. I mean, that was very real for her. So that was my experience of, communication after death in a very matter-of-factual way.
Yeah. After that communication usually happens during the night, because in the night when you sleep, the threshold of consciousness is lower, so you're more accessible from the consciousness of the deceased relative. So the people say, I had a dream, but it's not a dream, it's a concept. You forget a dream, and you never forget the after-death communication. It's a totally different.
I have a question for you. Do you feel that you think you use your mind differently? In other words, is it less here and more here? You know what I mean? In other words, do you feel that your thinking as such is lower down, not so much in here, that it's lower in more embodied? I'll put it that way.
It's both. It's both. It's everywhere. But you have the mental aspects and more the feeling aspects, such as, everything is an aspect of your consciousness. And I cannot localize it because it's everywhere.
Thank you so much. I wonder if there's last opportunity for questions. I know that Anne says she doesn't have a question, but
Well,
she...
Actually, I do now, but it's a
Oh,
different
she does
question.
now. Okay, come on, Anne.
So I have two related questions. One of them you mostly just answered, but for people who live very materialistically for their entire lives, and then their bodies die, what kind of experience do you think they have? That's the first question. And so I don't forget the second question.
The first question. When you die, you have the life review. And you live your whole life. And you see how much love you gave, or how much hate or egoism you had. And you feed it by the feeling of other people who are involved in all these things. So when you always was greedy and didn't want to help people, you're confronted with this aspect of yourself. So it's a life insight experience. There's never condemnation, but you get the insight that what you did wrong or what you could have done better. And that's why people change after an ND as well. They now want to give love and want to help. And helping someone is not because you want to be nice, but helping is the energy that you want to help. They're two different kinds of energy.
Right. Okay. The second question is, why would we come back to this life? This life is hard. Why would we come back again?
You mean after the death experience or a reincarnation? What do you mean?
I mean reincarnation. Is there such an actual thing as reincarnation, and why would that be true?
Because your higher self with capital decides that you have to learn more in this physical world.
Okay.
You have to learn your lessons. We each have to learn it. It's a free choice that you come back. They've even have stories that young children tell us that they have chosen their parents where they want to live, or even the country where they want to be born. It's a choice they have before they're born.
Gotcha. Well, I just want to express my gratitude. This helps enormously.
Okay, you're welcome.
I was going to say, can I say, I really believe that we choose our parents. I somehow really believe that there's something we need to learn. So then I want to know why we can't choose our death.
Well, when you have the enhanced intuition, then you know when you see someone that he will die in 6 months, and he died in 6 months. So in the higher aspects of consciousness, the moment of death is already fixed. When you have
so we do choose it.
Yeah, you cannot choose it. It's fixed. The moment you will die is fixed.
It's fixed.
So when we have with the modern medical techniques that you prolong life, it's not natural, or euthanasia is also not natural. So
I agree.
The moment of death is fixed already. The moment you are born.
Do you think the moment you're born is also fixed? I thought that was a choice.
Well, it's a choice. But when you're here, then you have to learn your lessons. And you can go from A to B. You can take all the wrong directions, but you end at B. So the free choice is in your life to make all the choices, the wrong choices as well, but you end always where you have meant to be.
That's when you were talking about the review of life, it was making me think of the Ghost of Christmas Past and the Ghost of Christmas Present, but also of Ivan Ilyich, which is a useful story for people to read, thinking about this. But the other thing that that came to me when I was listening to Mary there, I studied English literature at university, and in some of the Renaissance writers, it seemed as if towards the end of their writing, they were writing something again and again and again. And at some point something would be written, like in Shakespeare's late plays, for example. There is something about this idea of a father and a daughter, and the grace that a father is required to receive from the daughter, the what he's supposed to, the good that he is supposed to give to her. And it's almost as if that is that process of the lesson that needs to be learned in that life. And with great artists, maybe you can see it coming through. And in, I don't know if you're familiar with Sir Edmund Spenser's Fairy Queen. Probably, I don't see why anyone would read it. But anyway, there is an image in the penultimate book. It was meant to be 12 books long, and he only got like halfway through. And in the penultimate bit that he had written, there is an image of these women dancing in a circle and someone watching, and it's as if that these three concentric circles had created for him the image that he needed to be able to say that's this, for that I came, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you can feel that in art, you know, perhaps in sort of like I'm not good enough with music to be able to say, but I think in the work of sort of great writers, you can
Artists know a lot, and they have a lot of intuition as well.
Yes,
In Hamlet, he talked with his deceased father.
of course he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah. So
And Hamlet,
that's not new at all.
no, and Hamlet, his son who had died of the plague not long before writing that play was called Hamnet, which is you know, sort of also interesting. So he was left with daughters, and later in his life, the father-daughter thing is so important. And with that idea about the time of death as well, you must know the story of, it was in a particular, I've read it in a couple of books, I think, a particular hospice where there was a cat.
Yes, I know the story.
Yes, and
It was in UK somewhere in a hospice. It was a cat. It was a closed psychiatric ward where people were end of life, and the cat was free to walk. And as soon as he went on the bed of someone and lay down, then the nurses called the family, because he knew then that within hours the patient would die. The cat showed that. And later we heard the same story in the USA as well. Also in the hospital, a cat showed when people should die. They have intuition.
They do. I met a woman a few years ago who had adopted a dog, and this dog had been passed on through different people because the dog was unmanageable. And they had taken the dog because they liked him, and they were getting on well with him. And there were certain periods when the dog would, you know, lose it, as it were. And the woman was, she had very, very low blood pressure. And they worked out that actually the dog was responding to the very low blood pressure of the woman. Yeah. And it turns out that there are trained dogs who can kind of sense this. So now the dog has a job. His job is, you know, monitoring her blood pressure, and it has completely changed the dog is no longer anxious because the dog knows that when he says something's wrong, he's going to be listened to. And so, the dog's a lot happier, and she has this, she has his guidance as well. But it made me think, how often do you think when we have companion animals and the companion animal, is upset, how often is that companion animal sensing something that is, that is wrong in us that we might not find out for 10 or 15 years further?
We don't know, but it happens. It happens. You have to be very conscious about how the animal behaves, and then you can see some aspects of his behavior, but the animal cannot explain to you, but you can feel it or see it. And if it is a horse or a cat or a dog or whatever, there's contact. And also, and after that communication, you can meet especially children, you meet your deceased pet. your deceased animal or dog or cat. You will see it. So the consciousness of animals is still also in the higher dimension.
And trees?
No, not as far as I know.
Oh.
They have a lot of information that they share with people who are open.
Anne's just mentioned that her mother's cat Toots stayed on her bed for several days just before her death, except to eat, drink, and use the facilities.
Yeah, exactly. That
Oh,
happens.
and she's showing a picture. Speak, Anne, and then we can. Then
Yeah,
you'll become.
it was a stunning thing because my mother had been at home in hospice for months, and all of a sudden, Toots got on her bed and would not get off and held her hand like that for days. She would periodically jump off the bed, run to get a little food, a drink, and use the kitty litter box and jump back on. And we were all there for my mother's death. It was absolutely beautiful. All of her children, her husband, some grandchildren. And as soon as she actually died, Toots got up, shook off, jumped off, and said, "Okay, that's done. We can all go." It
Here's her
was.
job. Yeah, she knew.
She knew. She absolutely knew.
Wonderful.
And now at the time, I only have pictures of the cat and my mother's arm. Like it felt like I was being rude to take her face. So, but I have multiple pictures over those few days. It was just stunning. And then there was a book written about the cat in the hospice.
Yes.
And someone told us about it afterwards because this was just such a beautiful experience to have witnessed.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that it came up in this conversation. It's cool.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
It's also fascinating, just to add another piece. My mother died in February. My father died that May. With my mother, she let us know days ahead that she was dying. The cat got on the bed. We had time to get there. She started the actual dying process at about 2:00 in the morning. We had a hospice nurse there. He called upstairs. We were in the same house, but like he called my phone. I woke everyone up. We came. We had hours. We finally made cinnamon rolls and coffee and started telling stories and laughing. And it was like 5 hours between the time the hospice nurse said she was dying and the time she died. When my father, a few months later, was in hospice, he went to the hospital Thursday, came home Friday afternoon. We had hospice engaged that night. Saturday, he clearly went downhill. He appeared to be unconscious, but I said to him, "Look, I know you and Mom are different. If you want us to be here, you have to give us time to wake up and get here, to get downstairs and all of that. And if you don't, then you can do your death however you want to do. Just do it however you want." Again, it was like 3:00 in the morning. The hospice nurse called. By the time we got into the room, he was gone. They each decided how they wanted to experience that final moment. It was just beautiful. It was just
a moment of transition.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for.
I have one more question. Pim, do you meditate?
No, my wife can meditate, but my meditation is walking in nature, just for 1 hour in silence between the trees and listening to birds, etc. That's my meditation. I cannot sit. My wife gave yoga for years, etc. She can sit, but I cannot sit.
Is it all right to ask if you think the ego is a break on moving to higher levels of consciousness, or do you think if a person in a transcendent state that's still alive can go beyond the ego and rid themselves of the ego?
The ego is an aspect of your waking consciousness, let's say, from your physical body. When you're leaving your physical body, you're leaving this physical world, the ego aspects are gone. So you're open to something else. You have the enhanced consciousness, but beyond time, beyond space, you see your whole life, back your life review, future events, etc. You know what each thought you ever had, and deed and word you ever had is kept, and you're confronted with it. But your ego aspect is depending of your physical body.
Right.
And the eternal aspect is the self with capital.
Thank you for that, Mike, and thank you, Pim. I'm mindful that it's getting to later in the evening in the Netherlands, so thank you so much for generously going over the hour and sharing your wisdom, your insight, and incredible experiences. We've been delighted and honoured to have you on Living One. This has been a fantastic encounter with the unseen. And so just thank you from all of us.
It was a pleasure.
And I'll hand back over to Olivia to round things up and look ahead to next time.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you so much, Pim. This has been incredible, so eye-opening and just fascinating. So thank you so much, and to everybody here today, thank you for joining us. Our next Living One speaker will be 1 week from today on May 23rd at 1 hour later than our usual time. So we'll be meeting at 11 a.m. Pacific time instead of 10 a.m. Pacific time. We will be welcoming Per Ingvar Haukeland, an eco-philosopher and a professor at Southeast Norway in the Outdoor Life program, who will share some personal experiences with how he finds invisible powers visible in nature's mysterious ways and what consequences eco-animist insights and Indigenous awareness can have on what we see and do. If you enjoy Living One and feel called to support Carrillo's Living One and all of our sanctuary residents, please consider donating at the link on our website, carrillos.org. For those of you who have not already signed up for our Living One companion course for this series, you're still welcome to do so. You can do that on our website, or you can contact us at contact@carrillos.org if you have any questions. And if you'd like to deepen your practice and experience with attending and encountering the world, the unseen world, you can join us in exploring a meditative practice at Vital Breath for Earth, which happens every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you again. And thank you, Pim, so much for joining us. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye.